I'm Maryn.
And I'm Christie.
And you're listening to Hung, a podcast where we talk about true crime from the court of law to the court of public opinion.
All right, so we are doing things a little bit different today. This is Kouri Richins, episode 5. And we're going to try and wrap up the last of the testimony today, but we are recording remotely today. We have a big family trip that we're headed out on later today. And so Maryn is recording from her space. How far is it? An hour or so?
Like an hour, yeah.
She's recording an hour north of here, so we have things set up a little differently, and so the sound quality might not be as great, but you know, we're doing our best to bring this episode to you today.
Yeah. Well, I normally have to drive an hour to record it all, and then an hour back, so hopefully this works out okay.
Yeah, we're definitely trying to see if we can find a good situation with this, because it will give us a lot more flexibility in our recording. So, okay, so let's jump into some of this final testimony that we have, and some of it, well, I'll just say, we're just going to try and blaze through. Some of these don't have a whole lot to say, so I think I'll be able to wrap it up pretty quickly. And then, of course, there are a few that are going to have more extensive testimony. The first witness that we're going to talk about today is the attorney that Kouri consulted with for divorce. Well, or she is a divorce attorney, because there's an attorney-client privilege. There's not a bunch that she can say.
Right. What's the purpose of, I mean, I guess I'll just have to see, like, what questions are asked and what's answered, because, I mean, is it just like, can you confirm Kouri reached out to you to be her divorce lawyer? And it's basically like, yes, that's it.
Well, and they can't even say that it was a consultation for divorce. I mean, they ask her what type of law she practices, and she deals mostly in family relations, quote unquote, which they said, is that primarily divorce stuff? Yes. So like child custody issues, things like that. Kouri came, she paid a retainer to the attorney, and then later she refunded Kouri because Kouri did not use her services. So that's all that she could say to the state. The defense gets up and they pull up this attorney's bio from online, and they're like, well, see how it says right here that you also do boundary issues, easements, landlord-tenant relations? And she says, yes. Do you do work in that area? Yes. Kind of leaving it open like, well, I mean, Kouri bought and sold properties, and, you know, maybe she was talking to you because she had boundary issues or, you know, something to do with property and not to do with divorce. And the state gets back up and they say, well, okay, so, but were you working in those areas in 2022? And she says, no. She was primarily working in family relations. And then she added on that stuff later. So I hate that the defense is always trying to like, yeah, but maybe it was this, maybe it was that, but it wasn't. And they know it wasn't. And so why? Like, why are you just wanting to muddy the waters in every single way, even when you know it's not true? Like, they know she consulted this attorney for divorce advice.
Right. It's also like, what does it do for them? I feel like in so many aspects, it has been hinted that she or they tried to get divorced at some point or whatever, but now they're like, no, but she didn't. It's like anything the state brings up, they want to say, It's like,
yep.
Okay.
How do you know? How do you know that she consulted a divorce attorney? But we're going to hear stuff in the upcoming testimony that shows 100% that this was a consultation for divorce. So why? Why is it that you're trying to do this? Because it just makes me distrust the defense when they do that. Because if they're really trying to bring up things that are, let us show you the reality, but instead they're just saying, let us show you another possible reason for that. We know it's not really the real reason, but we're going to pretend like maybe it could be the reason, even though we know that it's not. So then that makes me feel like I can't trust anything that you say.
It's all reasonable doubt. It's all poking holes, but in all the areas that it doesn't matter anyway. So it's like, who cares?
And how about you leave it for the stuff that maybe this is the real reason, and the reason you're saying maybe this is the real reason is because you believe it is the real reason.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Or like, oh, well, because of what Kouri's told us, we know that she was talking to this attorney not about divorce. She was talking to her about a boundary issue. Well, and then you can show that that's the case, right? But why are you doing that when you know it wasn't actually that? And so, like, just leave that alone. Let it be the things that you're like, okay, but there's a different explanation for this. The real explanation. It's different than what it seemed, and this is the real thing. And so show us the real thing. Don't say, well, maybe it wasn't that. Maybe it was something else, but you know it wasn't. You're just throwing it out there, you know?
Yeah.
So,
no.
I don't know.
Yeah, no questions from the defense. That's how it should have gone, and move on.
Right. Yep. So that was it. It was like, okay, thank you very much. But then they play this phone conversation that Kouri had with her brother while she was in prison, or jail. Sorry, there's a difference. While she was in jail.
There is a difference.
The jail calls that we didn't want them to know were jail calls. Right. Mm-hmm. Where she's telling her brother, well, I only did it because Eric did it first. And I was just doing it to protect myself. And I didn't even do anything. Like, I didn't even pursue it. Nothing came of it whatsoever. And then he did it, and he did a whole bunch of illegal stuff as a result of that consultation, according to them during that conversation. Like, he created the trust. They're characterizing at him doing something illegal, right? Which, you know,
I would know. I do illegal stuff all the time.
That's right. I'm the best judge of that. Yeah. So she says, the attorney, she kept telling me that I needed to fill out this packet. And I told her, no, I don't want to do that. And I just want some advice, but I don't want half of everything. So clearly, I mean, what? I don't want half of this boundary that I claim that is, you know, like, what's half of everything? It's divorce. Come on, people.
Right.
And so she gave me this packet to fill out, and I just threw it away because I don't want half of everything. No, she wants all of everything.
Right. I was like, what does she want then? Like, she just wants them to be together? Is like that the insinuation? I don't want half of everything. Or no, half of everything is not enough for me.
Right. Well, and definitely the implication on the call was her saying, I don't want Eric's stuff. I don't want Eric's money. It's not about money and stuff for me. I'm not being greedy. I just want out. I want to be done, you know. But
it's a good thing they have a prenup
really,
that
right. I'm like, is that really the reality? You didn't want anything? That's BS. That is BS. Her brother says, like, well, they're probably going to call her. She's probably going to testify. And she's like, well, I want her to testify. If they don't call her, then we should call her, because then she can say, yeah, Kouri didn't want anything, and she, you know, whatever. But of course she doesn't say
she can't.
That stuff, you know? I mean, as it goes on, it's like, oh my gosh, okay, this is really becomes more and more pointless. So then we have a friend of Kouri's, Becky Lloyd, who was a neighbor. She eventually ended up working for Eric's company, C&E, as an admin. And she reports that early December, actually December 17th of 2021. And they asked, that's very specific. How do you know that? Well, because I keep a journal. Mm-hmm. And I have photographs from that day, too. So she and Kouri were together wrapping Secret Santa gifts. And it was just the two of them. And Becky had divorced earlier that year. And so Kouri was asking Becky how things were going. And Becky was asking Kouri, how are things with her marriage? What's happening? And Kouri had mentioned that she and Eric had had a fight that day. Kouri told her that she was feeling really trapped, that there was no way forward out of the marriage, that she was afraid that she was going to lose the kids, and that Eric's family would turn the community against her. And she claims that Kouri said, in many ways, it would be better if he were dead. Becky described the conversation as having a very serious tone, that she could tell that Kouri was frustrated. And, she took it as like, well, yeah, I can see just how bad things have gotten, how serious this is. And she felt bad for both of them. The state finishes their questioning and the defense is getting up to cross-examine, and Kouri's like staring at her defense attorney as she's getting ready to get up, and she's just looking at her like, can you even believe this? Can you believe what she's saying right now? And the defense attorney gets up and she's like, well, so didn't you get this job because of Kouri, the job at C&E? And she says, yeah, Kouri let me know that the job was available when it came open, and she recommended her for the job. And so almost, how dare you say this bad stuff about your friend who helped you get this job? It's like, well,
it's so weird, because it's like, if it were anybody that had anything to do with Eric's family, then it's a conflict of interest on that end. Like, But then it's so weird that they try to do the same thing, but opposite. Like, well, didn't Kouri get you this job? Wouldn't that be a bad thing? And in the way that you've talked about people having connections to anybody, like, that would be a negative thing, actually. Like,
right. It's like, well, she would have less reason to say bad things about Kouri if Kouri had this close relationship with her, and close enough that she helped her get this job with C&E. But it's almost like, weren't you guys good friends and she helped you get this job, and then you turned against her and once you got close to the C&E people or something, Right.
It's almost like that's the line of questioning that should have been going from the state, like, oh, but weren't you close to Kouri? And it's like, it's just weird. It's just like, I don't know what that does, because
she has no reason to want to say bad things or say these specific things, and yet here she is, and she, you know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, that actually makes her testimony stronger, right? Because she worked in the office at C&E, they ask her about Kouri getting a paycheck from C&E. And so I guess all the way up to Eric's death, she was getting a paycheck every other week from C&E.
Who was interesting. Kouri or
Kouri? Oh. Yeah, Kouri was getting paid by C&E, even though she wasn't doing any work for them anymore, or nobody said that she was doing any work for them. But it was almost like, because she was Eric's wife or something, like, she kept drawing this paycheck. Once Eric died, she stopped receiving those paychecks. And the defense claims that Kouri called the office and told them not to send her any more checks. Okay. And she's like, I don't remember exactly, but yes, we did stop sending her checks a short time after Eric died. But she doesn't remember all the details around that. The other thing the defense wants to bring up is, like, well, weren't you and Kouri, having girl talk that day that you claim she made that statement? And yeah,
that's why she made the statement, because we were having girl talk.
Almost like, don't you know girl talk is sacred? How dare you bring up girl talk?
You broke the girl to girl privilege. Okay.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So after Eric died, Becky had an interview with the private investigator about a month after Eric's death. So April 6th of 2022. And the defense attorney states that Becky did not include the fact that Kouri had made the comment that in some ways it would be better off if Eric were dead. And later on, she does another interview, and what had happened in between. So she interviews with this private investigator, and she has in the back of her mind, gosh, am I really remembering that right? And this is my friend, and that's a hard thing to say, because I don't want to think that she would have done something like that, or I don't want to say that to somebody because, hey, girl talk, the girl talk privilege. But she went to some of her friends and said, do you remember that conversation that I told you about that I had with Kouri? And what do you remember me telling you about that conversation? And she said, without prompting, let them report what they remembered. And it matched what she recalled. Apparently, Becky had made that comment to people, so the PI came back to her. And it was now a year later or something after Eric's death. And he questioned her again, and she did say, yeah, I do recall this. But she also said, well, I don't know if I could get up on the stand and say that with confidence.
Okay.
You know, like kind of struggling about it. And then when the state gets back up to redirect, they say, okay, well, tell us why do you believe that Kouri made that statement? And she said, well, I mean, the reason that struck me is because I'd gone through a divorce. And I know when you go through a divorce that some pretty hard feelings can develop, and you can have some strong reactions and maybe some internal dialogue with yourself. But that Kouri had said that quiet part out loud. She actually said that, and she was kind of surprised that she said it. And even though she wasn't like, oh my gosh, Corey's off the rails, she's going to kill Eric, she was like kind of shocked that she actually said that out loud. And she had talked to her friends and reported what Kouri said. Now, this is more breaking the girl code right here. That she, within a couple days, told her friends what Kouri had said to her and included this part that Kouri had said it would be better off if Eric were dead. So she's not keeping the confidence, right? Kouri has shared some stuff. She's going through a hard time. She's made this statement that obviously is not a flattering thing to have said to somebody. And then Becky goes and tells a couple friends what Kouri said and how shocked she was by it. So there's really where the girl code was broken. But it does say they were told that before Eric's death, not after Eric's death.
Yes. Well, I don't know. It all depends. Like, if they also know Kouri, then it's kind of breaking girl code. If they don't know Kouri, then that's just different girl talk.
True. She's just trying to process something with her girls. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, that's true.
It's different if you like talk to a friend and you're like, oh my gosh, this other friend I have said this thing, than if you're talking to somebody that's a mutual friend and said, oh my gosh, guess what Kouri said. All right.
Right.
So I don't know what the actual situation is there, but you know.
Honestly, if you are close friends and your friend is confiding in you, you shouldn't be sharing that information with somebody else. That should be kept private. And I can also understand her feeling shocked by Kouri making that statement, and shocked enough that maybe she said, I can't believe that Kouri actually said this. But still, I don't know. But the state really get her to sell her integrity. I mean, convince the jury of her integrity is what I mean. Not sell it away.
I was like,
sell them on her integrity, you know.
Gotcha.
Like that, yeah. For 30 pieces of silver. Okay. She says, I'm never going to get on the stand and say something that I don't know as true. Kouri is like, again, flabbergasted, and the state says, are you confident in your testimony today? And she says, I am. And then the defense is just like, so now your testimony is that you were told about the statement by someone else. And she's like, no, I wasn't told about the statement by someone else. I was confirming that my memory matched what they were saying, and it did. Right. So they're kind of saying, oh, well, now they're telling you that, hey, don't you remember that you had this conversation and she said this? Oh, yeah, that's right. No. And she's like, no, that's not how it was. And she says, you know, this is a really hard position to be in. This is a good friend of mine. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be saying this. My friends didn't give me my statement. They just helped me do a hard thing. So, you know, like, okay, all right, yeah, I have to admit to myself that this actually did happen, and I don't want to say that out loud, but I kind of feel like I need to. But they did bring up that she never asked Kouri herself, like, so remember when you said that? Did you really mean that? Or you...
Why would you? Nobody would do that, especially not after he died.
Right. So you remember that time?
Right. And then beforehand, you're just kind of like, well, that was a crazy thing to say, but I can't imagine bringing that up again unless I was actually concerned that they were going to do something, which I don't think she was at the time. She just thought, oh, that was kind of a crazy thing to say.
It's like, well, how good of friends were you if you waited all this time? You had a year to talk to her about it and ask her clarifying questions before she was arrested, and you never bothered to do that. And I don't know that I would either in that situation. I'm not sure, but
it's not my job. I'm not an investigator, and that's beyond my scope. Like, I don't know. It's just, and then also, yeah, it's insensitive to say as well if she didn't kill him. If he, then it's like rubbing it in your face, like, oh, remember how you said it might be better if he's dead? Is it actually better? Like, are you happier now?
You thought it was a joke then. Is it a joke now? No.
Yeah. No, it's just not something. Yeah, I wouldn't do that. I'm not surprised that she didn't do it. It's
Yeah, and she did say, like, she appeared to be very serious and she did not seem to be joking, when they were talking, which, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, was she not joking, but maybe didn't mean it? Those are different things, too. Like,
sure. Yeah, I mean, and honestly, I think you could say, I mean, that statement is probably true for a lot of people, saying, like, in many ways, it would probably be easier / better, right? If I don't have to pursue a divorce, if he were just out of the picture. Like, who is that not true for? Not that you were wanting them dead, but it would certainly be easier if you didn't have to deal with that.
Now, also, it would be a lot easier if they just died of natural causes, not if you killed them. That doesn't make things any easier. It, in fact, made things much harder for her.
Right. Exactly. So I could see someone making that statement, and it's just like a true thing that it would be easier in many ways, right? Not in all ways, for sure, but it would be easier than having to try and go through the whole divorce process and stuff like that, if that's what you're considering.
Yeah, I think it would be harder in ways you maybe didn't anticipate, but without having the emotional impact of it actually happening, it is easy to say, like, it would just be less complicated if this is how it ended. But so
for sure.
Again, it's not like, was she joking? I don't think she was joking, but if somebody said that, would that mean that they meant it? Not necessarily.
Right. Yeah, so then they kind of go into the February 14th alleged attempted murder. And so one thing that I was really confused about was the lunch thing and her getting lunch and it being poison. I was like, wait a minute, but I know at 9:40 she was heading down the mountain to meet up with Josh Grossman. So how is this, like, it didn't make sense to me. And I finally am like, okay. And the reason it doesn't make sense is because in multiple statements that are being made, both by the defense, by Kouri herself, that they bring up, she keeps saying lunch. And I'm like, when lunch? Like, you were gone. How did you... I don't understand. Like, I don't understand how this worked. But... So the restaurant owner gets on the stand and has receipts, for the orders she made. So she called in an order for...
Can I get the Michael Jackson sandwich?
A little sprinkling on there. So she orders a Greek omelet for herself. And then she orders a bagel sandwich with hash browns. That are, so it's a breakfast sandwich.
Gotcha.
Because, like, she orders it at 8:55 a.m. This is breakfast time, right? So she goes and picks it up at 9:07 a.m. And then we know by 9:40 she's headed down the mountains. So she has dropped this sandwich off for Eric. And then she leaves the scene, right? But they're like, so what's on that sandwich? The restaurant guy's like, okay, it's 2 slices of bacon, 2 eggs, a slice of pepper jack cheese, about 1/4 of an avocado, 2 slices of tomato on a plain bagel with hash browns. Yeah, I'm like, that's a lot of stuff on there. Actually, I could see how you could hide a sprinkling of something on there. In the middle of all that.
Of all the things to poison, a sandwich just seems crazy.
Yeah, it does. But then we have one of Eric's friends, another Joshua Kays, who has known Eric for about 10 years. They worked together on construction jobs and they hunted together a lot, so they got to know each other really well. On February 14th, Eric called him, and he says that the conversation was notable because of Eric's emotion, that he was typically like really upbeat and talkative, and this conversation he was just super somber. He felt very concerned, scared, serious, and said he'd never heard Eric sound like that before. They wouldn't let him say what Eric said during the conversation. I always hate this. Like, the victim you should be able to say, but I guess because they can't question the victim, you can't verify. But he had asked Eric, are you okay now? Are you going to go to the hospital? And what are you going to do about it?
Eric suspected that she had tried to poison him.
I think that was the implication, but they can't actually say that. You know, they're like, well, what are you going to do? Like, well, what are you? I mean, are you going to go to the hospital? Well, okay, because you're sick. Or, well, what are you going to do about it if you think that this was a real attempt, you know, or something? What are you going to do about it? He couldn't say anything more than that. But he did say that he talked to his wife about it that night, and a couple days later told a couple mutual friends about that conversation. Okay, then we get to Chelsea Barney. This is the friend, the best friend of Kouri's, and apparently they had been best friends since middle school. And they would talk pretty much every single day, at least text, if not conversation. Okay, so they talked about the whole HELOC thing, and Kouri had talked to Chelsea about this situation and Eric finding out about it. Chelsea was like, oh my gosh, I'm freaking out, and Kouri tells her, oh, everything's going to be fine, but if I die, Eric did it. Like,
oh no.
He might kill me because he found out about this HELOC, you know. And then she's like, crazy though, right? I don't know what I'm going to do. If he thinks I owe him money, then that's fine. I'll pay whatever he thinks. And then I'm out. It's getting a little out of hand. So that is, again, more like I'm getting out of the marriage, right?
Yeah, and she's right. Things were getting out of hand.
Yeah. Chelsea's opinion of the situation based on what she's learned from Kouri is, yeah, it's getting way out of hand. I don't think you should pay him anything. Let the attorneys decide stuff like that, because guarantee they will say you don't owe him anything, or that his payout of the house won't be as big, which is fine. And then Kouri amps it up. Like, it's just like, she is so exaggerative in all of these things that she says to people. Oh, exactly. They would say he still owes me triple of what he says I owe him just for paying me out for the house. Just kind of feel like an a-hole, or maybe I shouldn't, but I feel like it would be like bad karma or something if I didn't. Honestly, what would you do? Just let the attorneys handle it? And I don't know, just, you know, back and forth. She's like, yeah, well, technically it's my money, so I shouldn't feel bad. But Chelsea does say, I just worry he's going to keep digging and hire a PI or something, and things get bad. And she did also ask her how much she borrowed or how much she took out, and she said $250K, and that it would take her a couple months to pay it off.
It would take me a couple of payday loans to get that back.
Actually, it never got paid off.
Yeah.
And then her response to the whole PI thing is, oh, for sure. So I just got to be top-notch careful. He's totally going to, I feel like. And then, beep, will hit the fan. And there's nothing more important to me than the boys and making sure custody is always going to be at least 50-50. And if he digs and finds something, I don't want him hiring some expensive attorney to fight for the kids or something. I don't know. Everything has gone through my mind on the endless possibilities. So to me, it is like the whole PI thing. She knows there is stuff to find, right?
Right. Well, so, and then the question is, like, what does Chelsea know? Does Chelsea know all this financial stuff, or does Chelsea know about her affair?
Right.
My guess would be more so the affair, especially if she's wiring her money to put on a house later on. Probably doesn't know all this crazy money stuff.
Right. She does say that she knew about Kouri's business, but she didn't know anything about the finances, never had any indications that Kouri was in any sort of financial distress, nothing like that. And Kouri told her that the house that she flipped made her money, and she gave him back all the money that she borrowed. BS. She did not. We know that she didn't.
Lie
No.
face.
I know. Lie face. Yeah. So it's like, there's so many examples of this that we're going to see throughout this episode's testimony where she's telling people things that we know are false statements. They think she's telling them the truth, but we know they're not true. Kouri also talks to Chelsea about the autopsy results and the beginning of May of 2022, so a couple months later after Eric's death. Kouri says, my attorneys have been talking to me all day about it. They're saying if it's poisoning, that means he overdosed on it by accident, obviously, because he doesn't do drugs. Mm-hmm. He said they have no evidence of either of us having anything to do with it. Well, not yet. They're going to eventually. Yeah. So somehow it got into his system. We should get the cause of death and autopsy this week, and then my attorneys are going to push for everything and try and close this out. So I'm like, okay, well, she's saying this is May 7th that we should get the cause of death and autopsy this week. Remember way back to Josh Grossman's testimony, and they want us to pay attention to the day that she told Josh that there was a trace of fentanyl in his system. That was April 16th of 2022. This is May 7th, and she's still saying they don't have the autopsy back, and that if it's poisoning, that means he overdosed on it by accident. So I think they did have preliminary results back or something, and that's what she was telling Josh, something about. But even right here, she's saying they don't have the formal or the final autopsy report back, and this is May 7th. Mm-hmm. And Chelsea's like, yeah, it's nuts. They say poisoned and automatically jump to murder. Like, no, that's ridiculous. But she goes on and on about how hard she fought to perform CPR after she found him, mm-hmm. and just how devastating it was. And I just did everything that I could, and, all of this stuff, which the state is going to bring up later. Kouri also says she hired the law firm that represents the Jazz. Cool. It cost me $100K. I will effing win. They will not take from me what is mine and what I worked my butt off for. They won't. Thanks, friend. I love you. I'm like, okay.
How much legal trouble has the Jazz team been in? Like, how much experience does their legal team have?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. But obviously, they've got to be a pretty big name for an expensive team to be hiring them. But the interesting thing is that these are not the attorneys that are currently representing her in court.
Yeah.
So
too expensive. She doesn't have any money.
I don't know. I think this attorney might be more expensive. I don't know if I told you, but this is the attorney that is representing Tyler Robinson, who is been charged with the shooting of Charlie Kirk. So those are her attorneys.
Well, I mean, I guess she did get money from his life insurance, so.
True. Maybe that's where the $600K went to that we're not sure about. Okay, a couple things that we haven't heard about. Chelsea was at Kouri's house, and they had gotten a locksmith to come over and try and get into the safe. And one of Eric's sisters, this time Amy, which we haven't heard much about, she saw the locksmith there and said, whoa, and kind of threw a fit and said, don't do that, or whatever. And Kouri was really upset and was hysterical, collapsed, couldn't believe this was happening. I guess this is on April 6th, a couple days after he died, that she was trying to break into the safe. So I don't know. Chelsea says that Kouri was very generous with her, or so she thought, right? Kouri had bought a house to flip. Kouri had said, well, I'll let you buy this house from me. And I guess they were trying to work on the loan refinancing, and it hadn't happened. And so it was decided that Kouri was going to sign over the deed to the house to Chelsea. And Chelsea would be the owner of the house, but Kouri was still going to stay on the loan for the house. And that Chelsea would pay the mortgage company directly for the mortgage payment. So she was paying the mortgage. They showed us the deed for the house that is signed by both Chelsea and Kouri, and it was signed on January 6th of 2023. And she had never ended up closing again on that house. And Chelsea says that Kouri used that money to pay back the broker for the deal that had been made on the house. And so she's going along paying this mortgage payment. And then in September of 2024, she gets an eviction notice from her house. And she's like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? So she goes to find out about that deed that was signed by both her and Kouri, and it was notarized and everything. Well, the deed was never filed with the county, so it was never recorded. We talked about that. Kouri was arrested coming out of a title company. Kouri, at that title company, she had used Chelsea's house and another home in Roy to secure a new loan for something else. Well, she ended up giving the deed to the house to someone else in lieu of foreclosure. So I'm like, wait a minute. So she just gave that deed to somebody else, and now Chelsea has been paying this money, and she's been living in this house, and she's signed the deed that Kouri never had recorded, and now the house belongs to someone else. So she's got no legal recourse, and she has to get out.
Yikes.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, so terrible. You know, like, oh, yeah. She talked to Chelsea a lot about things that were going on with the investigation, and tells her the authorities think that she didn't even try CPR, and Eric had concerns over the Midway house, and he didn't want her to close on that, and they fought about it or something, and them thinking or claiming that she tried to kill him with a sandwich, and that, yeah.
Killing with a sandwich has a different mental image than what actually happened there.
Yeah. So, but she represents what happened on Valentine's Day. So this is another example of something that she says we know not to be true. She says that she ordered lunch from the diner, that he never broke out in hives or used an EpiPen. She was with him, and someone else was there too, Bailey. And he said the sandwich hurt his stomach, so he was going to nap. No hives, no EpiPen. I'm like, wait a minute. First of all, it wasn't lunch because it was breakfast. Second of all, you weren't there because you were down in Provo, and you weren't with him. You can't say whether or not he broke out in hives or used an EpiPen because you were not effing with him, like you're saying. You were hours away, you know, so... And she's insisting at that point that Eric was not going to divorce her. They can go through our texts and read the message she would send to me and know that. And I'm like, okay, so... Turns out, though, Kouri didn't know at this time that Eric had gone to a divorce attorney. So Chelsea was present during this conversation that Kouri had with Eric's best friend, Bryce. And for some reason, do not ask me why, they record the conversation that they're having with Bryce. So It seems like it's on his second phone that they're recording the conversation that they're having with Bryce, because you can see the camera of the other phone. I don't know. It's weird. I'm not really sure. But she wants to find, like, what's going on? They're trying to take the house away from me, you know, the whole thing with the trust, and everyone's being mean to me. They're trying to get everything, and I don't even want his money, blah, 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 blah. But in that phone call with him, she claims, like, I made so much money in my business, and I own 12 properties that are almost all paid off. What?
Yeah.
No. And she's saying, like, look, my kids are going to have so much money because of what I did. Because I took that $250,000 on the HELOC, now we have $11 million in real estate property. Seriously, like, he didn't trust me, and we sat down and we had this conversation, Eric and I, just a couple weeks before his death, about how crazy it was, how this was the best decision I ever made, was taking out this $250K on the house, because now we're just rolling in money. No. And she's like, all I want is the house. Like, they can take everything else. I'll give them the life insurance money. They can have everything else. I just want my house. This is the only thing that matters to me. It's just wild to me.
Which is like, they weren't kicking her out of the house either, so...
Right. I mean, from everything we've heard, that's not what was happening. But it is interesting to me that when you put into context the fact that she's having this conversation with Eric a couple weeks before his death, talking about, like, wow, isn't it crazy? It's so shocking to realize, like, how much money we have right now in equity in these properties. We're going to be set for life, and he's just blown away by this. But the reality is totally different. And so it's like, oh my gosh, if that's really what he believes and that's what you're selling him, pretty soon you're not going to be able to float that boat anymore. Mm-mm. So it does actually seem to me that now the motivation for, like, maybe this story that I've been selling, it's going to come crashing down because it's not reality. And I'm like, how long can I keep up this story before the reality comes out, Mm-hmm. But Eric's friend, Bryce, on that phone call, he's like, yeah, well, I mean, Eric just cared about you. He cared about the kids. He just was concerned about making sure you guys were taken care of. And she says, yeah, I know, but if you could just read the way the trust is written. To her, she felt like, oh, that was so hurtful the way that he wrote it. Mm-hmm. And okay, she goes on this whole big soapbox thing about COVID. The Emmy said that they tested him twice for COVID, and those came back positive, both tests, and that he had a fungal infection in his lungs. His lungs were completely covered with white spots, and the Emmy thinks that between the COVID and the fungal infection, that's why he died. And she, like, I was fighting with her. There's no way it was COVID. He was so healthy. There's no way. He wasn't sick. He didn't have any symptoms of lung problems. We don't believe in COVID. We don't believe in being vaccinated. And so there's no way that she's going to put COVID down as a cause of death on that death certificate. She shouldn't have pushed for that. She should have gone with it. She should have said, yes, let's go with COVID.
Go with COVID.
That would be better. And
doesn't matter if you believe in COVID or not. You can still die from it.
That's right.
Not that that's what he died from, but...
No. But she did say that... when she told the Emmy about his work as a stonemason, the Emmy had brought up silicosis from the inhalation of the dust and things like that from his job, and that she was going to keep testing and look into that. And she's like, it wasn't that. He never worked around that stuff. And she's just so insistent that he didn't die of any of these other things, which is just interesting.
It is interesting because wouldn't you want it to be anything but the thing that you poisoned him with, if that's what you did?
Right, I know. Which, I think is maybe a point in the defense's favor, is why she's fighting so hard, Mm-hmm. But apparently Eric's sisters had said that they wanted to wait on action with the trust stuff or whatever they were doing between them and Kouri until the autopsy results came back, because they think Kouri might have had something to do with his death. And this is what Chelsea is telling to Bryce. And then she's like, what? They think I killed him. What? They think I gave him too much water? Like, how would I have killed him? Okay. Yeah.
So silly.
Yeah. Apparently, one of the sisters, Amy, accused Kouri of being an incompetent mother. They said that at this celebration of life that they had at Kouri's house, where a bunch of Eric and Kouri's friends came over, they were drinking, they were, whatever, and that Kouri was too drunk to take care of her kids, and so Amy had to take at least 2 of them because Kouri wasn't safe to take care of them that night or something like that. So there was definitely a lot of tension between the families, and Kouri was definitely offended by, what the family seemed to be thinking, or that they were having questions about it at all, or wanting to wait for the autopsy results or whatever. Then we have a really brief testimony from another of Kouri's friends, and she's one of the friends that was at that celebration of life. She'd also been visiting Kouri and Eric from California a couple weeks before Eric died. During that visit, Eric said, Kouri tried to poison me. But she says, well, he was saying it in a joking way. And that he said, well, I took a bite of the sandwich. I had an allergic reaction and I had to give myself a shot with an EpiPen. So that's what Allie says that he reported. But then we have Kouri saying, I was there. He didn't break out in hives and he didn't have to give himself a shot with an EpiPen, which I don't know. It's like...
Well, how is Allie allowed to say what he said, but what's-his-face wasn't allowed to say what he said?
Good question. I do not know. She does say, well, he was joking, but then she also does say that Kouri said, no, that's not what happened. It was, blah, 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 and kind of tried to cast it as something else.
Right.
So the other thing, Kouri had told Allie about her affair with Josh back in June of 2020. So she knew from the beginning of when it started. And then when she saw Kouri in February of 2022, she tells Allie that she's broken things off with Josh, and they've been broken up for approximately 9 months. We know that they are still going strong at this point, and she's claiming that they've been broken up since, spring, early summer of the year before? We know that's not true.
It's just and it's always weird when people just lie for no reason. Why? What was the purpose of you even saying that?
Maybe because she's about to kill Eric.
Maybe. And she doesn't want it to look like she has motive.
Yes, she wants to establish that, oh yes, me and my boyfriend, we broke up 9 months ago. He's not even in the picture, so don't pay attention to that. Kouri and Allie had gone to a retreat in Arizona, and as part of their activities, they were supposed to write their life history in third person. And they found Kouri's form where she had written this out. And Allie does say, yes, that is the form. And this is what Kouri wrote about herself. Kouri was born in 1990 in Oklahoma. Her parents were married and worked for the same engineering company. They were both previously married with children. Together, Kouri's parents had Kouri and her brother Ronnie. Ronnie and Kouri had to move a lot when they were kids. From 1990 to 1996, they lived in 17 different states due to their parents' work. Kouri's father was a successful engineer, but he was also an alcoholic and had been most of his life. In 1996, he was drinking and driving and fell asleep at the wheel and hit/ran over a cop who had another car pulled over on the side of the road. He was put in prison for the next 6.5 years. Yeah, I'm like, ooh, ouch. Kouri's mom, who today is her best friend, had her own addiction. She is a compulsive gambler. Once Kouri's father was put in prison, her mom then filed for divorce in 1998 and continued working full-time, rarely being home. Tanya, Kouri's dad's daughter, was raised by her mom. DJ, Kouri's half-brother, lived with his father. Well, he doesn't now, unless he's also in prison. However, Kouri's older sister helped Kouri's mother raise Kouri and Ronnie while their mother worked. Once Renee, that must be the stepsister, turned 18, she left and never had a relationship again with Kouri or Ronnie because she blames them and having to help raise them, destroying her life as a kid. In 2000, Kouri and Ronnie and their mother moved to Utah to be closer to their mom's sister and finally settled down. Their mother was a compulsive gambler And there was a casino only a couple hours from our home. Every other weekend growing up, we would spend it in a hotel room while Mother gambled. Eventually, our home was foreclosed on, multiple cars repoed, and ends were barely being met. Kouri's mother spent everything and more to fulfill her addiction needs, even if that meant losing our home multiple times. Kouri lost trust in her parents at a very young age. She graduated from high school in 2007 when she was 17, eager to begin college and have a stable life, make a stable life for herself. She began college and met her new husband. When Kouri met her husband, she instantly fell for the idea of a marriage with kids and a happy family, a stable family, because that was her dream. Kouri got pregnant her sophomore year of college, which was very unexpected. At the time, Kouri's relationship was very rocky, but she thought, no, once the baby gets here, I'll be happy and everything will be fine. Kouri had her first son in 2012, graduated college that same year. She then got married in 2013 because she told herself, when I get married, I'll be happy. In 2014, she had her second son because she told herself, another baby will make me happy. Kouri then started graduate school in 2016 because that will fill this hole and make me happy, but it didn't. In 2017, she had her third son and her life spiraled downhill. She graduated from grad school in 2018. However, she also found out her husband had been having an emotional affair. Kouri went to counseling on and off because of anxiety, depression, this constant need to chase happiness. She's exhausted from years of hearing, you're selfish, you're not enough, you need me from her husband. She's ready to open her heart and find the happiness that's already there and stop looking for it.
What was this for?
This was for the retreat that she went on. So
what kind of retreat was this? Like a...
I don't know.
Oh, yeah, weird. Okay.
I don't know. But it definitely gives us some information that she had a pretty rough childhood, a dad with alcohol addiction, a mom with gambling addiction. I mean, it just is interesting to me. She's trying to get out of this pattern that her parents created, but at the same time, she ends up in kind of the same pattern, right? I would say her addiction is gambling too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she's gambling on these houses and thinking she's going to make this money, but it just doesn't happen. And she keeps going and going and going. And this time is going to be the big payout, which this time was the Midway Mansion. It was going to get her out of all this other trouble that she was in. It also tells us the affair that Eric had was an emotional affair, not a physical affair like she was having with Josh. I'm not saying that clears Eric of getting involved or something like that, but
sure,
that does identify it as it was an emotional affair and not a physical affair. And she's ready to open her heart and find the happiness that's already there and stop looking for it. So I don't know. Kouri is an interesting person. That's what that tells me.
Very.
And she was searching for happiness in all of these places, but not finding it, right? So her kids weren't feeling it. Her husband wasn't feeling it. The marriage wasn't feeling it. And she's feeling exhausted, anxious, depressed. So I think the state wanted to introduce that as maybe some insight into Kouri and was she really in this relationship? Did she really want this relationship when we hear the way she's describing it and describing her experience with it? That certainly doesn't seem like someone who's happy, in love, working on their marriage and feeling good about things. Seems the opposite of that.
It's also just hard because it's obvious that she likes to present as different ways to different people. So it's hard to take all of that at 100% because she gets something else out of it, maybe by presenting in this more negative light. So it's just hard to say.
Right.
The truth is probably somewhere in the middle, right?
Right. Definitely does present as the worst possible painting of it, which, you know, we can all do that, right? There's the most negative way to look at a situation and the most positive way to look at the same situation. And this definitely seems to be like the most negative way that she could view this, you know, a way that might make people feel compassionate towards her or something. And I don't know if that was ever shared with anyone or if it was just supposed to be for herself. You know,
that's fair.
And maybe that's just that. If it's just for herself, then we can see that's the story she's telling herself about her life. You know, this is the way that she views it, that her husband's controlling and saying, you need me. And so that's not a very good viewpoint that she has of Eric and what impact he's having on her life. And that's a year prior to his death. Mm-hmm. And we know at the end of 2021 is when Becky, her friend, says it would be easier if he were dead, right?
Yep.
So she is the friend that does bring up going on a trip with Kouri to Hawaii. After they got there, Kouri found THC gummies in her suitcase. So she was upset because Eric apparently had hidden those THC gummies in her suitcase and she didn't know about it. And so if she had gotten searched or something by authorities, that she could have gotten in trouble for having those gummies. And Eric thought it was hilarious that he put them in there and Kouri didn't know, and they got him to Hawaii. And this was the defense that was questioning her at this point. So I think they're wanting to establish that Eric needed THC gummies so much that he would risk being caught or having Kouri be caught. So he was truly an addict. And this is how we know he was an addict, because he was sneaking this stuff on trips where they could get in serious trouble if it was found. She says that they did take gummies together. So they were trying to get to where those gummies were purchased from and show that, hey, we have this known source and we know something about it, right? But it came down to this girl had never bought gummies herself. She had never been present when the gummies were bought. She was only told where they were coming from. She can't really verify where they were coming from. So that just kind of died. But she talked about the party that they had at Kouri's house after Eric's death and said it was pretty much what she's experienced at other wakes, where they were laughing and drinking and hanging out, reminiscing about that person's life, and it's more a celebration than it is a funeral, right? They're grieving too, but they're also, it wasn't a party, it was us remembering his life.
A celebration of life, I think they tend to call those, right?
Yep. And they did show a picture where there are the friends there, and they show two different pictures, and they are like, okay, so who's in this? What time of night did this picture take place? Oh, well, it must have been earlier in the night because Bryce still has his pants on.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, Bryce. And Bryce in that phone call, he's like, oh my gosh, they're teasing about how he always takes his pants off. Like, not his underwear, but he'll take his pants off, And they show a picture of Chelsea taking a Jell-O shot and Kouri's grinning in the foreground or something, So they're trying to set this, like, they don't even care. They're not even sad, or they're, which I don't know that necessarily means that. I don't think that's necessarily evidence of wrongdoing that was the case. So business partner takes a stand, and I was really curious about what he was going to say, because obviously he's the one now with life insurance policy changes, with being close to Eric and business stuff, so he definitely has some details that other people wouldn't. So he said, though, that he and Eric both worked from home offices, and that Eric had a C&E computer at his house. They shared one email address for the business, which I'm like, okay, why wasn't that the email address being used for the life insurance company? I don't really know. And he does say that their business provided Kouri a loan for one of her projects when Eric found out about the HELOC, and his feeling was like they made it out of necessity, not because they were trying to invest in this property. They talk a little bit about that life insurance policy change. He says he did not make that change to his policy. He's not aware of Eric making any beneficiary changes at that time, but he was made aware of those changes being made. So I think that's kind of as much as he's allowed to say, is he didn't do it. He's not aware of Eric doing it. Who does that leave? And yes, we did know that those were made. Says never saw Eric take drugs, not over-the-counter drugs besides allergy meds, no prescription meds, no illicit drugs. He had gotten a call from Eric on Valentine's Day and said that Eric sounded really scared and emotional, and said the only other times he'd heard him sound like that were when his mom died and when he had been in a car accident and he was scared that the other driver may have passed away as a result of that accident. And this was the level of emotion that he was hearing from him on February 14th, the sandwich incident.
Yes.
So we get a little bit of detail about some things during the defense's questioning. They're trying to dig into like, oh, well, did you and Eric split everything evenly? Yeah. So did you make the same amount of money? Yes. Well, how much money did you make in 2022? Like, well, if Eric hadn't died, how much money would he have made? And so Kouri would be better off if he had lived. Doesn't mean she knows she'd be better off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even if she would be better off. But they won't let him answer any of those questions. But she asks him, well, how much did you make back in 2021? So the year prior. And he's like, I don't really know exactly the numbers. And she asks him if it was more than 500,000. He says, personally, no. So they're saying that Eric had claimed 750 on his tax returns for 2021. Okay. So they say, well, so if Eric's tax returns declared between 700,000 and 900,000, would that be way off base? And they won't let him answer it. But I mean, I could see that immediately, that they're saying his tax documents for 2021 placed him making 750, and Cody is saying less than 500 for himself. So I don't know, maybe they were both bad at math.
Yeah.
Or not accurate in their reporting. I don't really know. But he does recall that Kouri was being paid for C&E, well, that she was on the payroll. He doesn't remember how much she was being paid. He disagrees with the defense and says that he doesn't think Kouri requested to stop being paid, and that she was paid for longer than a few weeks past Eric's death. He thinks it was a couple months, and Kouri is definitely reactive to that claim. Which I'm like, bring the receipts. Why don't you like, well, here's the financials, like here's the payroll. Like, why don't you show us instead of, I don't know. It's just crazy to me that they like back it up, you know? So a couple things that they bring up that we've talked about before is the hunting violation. So apparently Eric had hunted without a tag for elk, and he was turned in by somebody else, and authorities came and questioned him, and he told the truth. He said, yeah, Eric knew he wasn't right, and he was prepared to be a big boy and take care of his own stuff. And he said, yeah, I felt okay with being honest and telling them true information. And he said it was hard because he knew what the ramifications would be for telling them the truth. But, you know, he's like, yeah, but he did. So apparently because of that violation, he wasn't allowed to hunt in the U.S., which is why he was going to Mexico to hunt.
Gotcha.
And apparently he had been in Mexico a few weeks prior. Well, he'd gone a few times, but he had been a few weeks prior. Then the night in question, he was on the phone with people in Mexico, right? So there's going to be a little bit more information about that. The defense wants to bring up that he had learned back in high school that Eric had done popped pills or something like that. And so when you say you never knew him to ever do that ever, well, were you just leaving that out with the exception of that, but not saying that that was the exception? And he says, well, I learned about it later. I didn't know about it at the time. I heard later that he had popped some pills in high school. He was told that they were called Red Devils and knows that people in his school were abusing those at the time. It comes down like, okay, well, what are Red Devils? And apparently Red Devils are Sudafed that people were abusing. So that's cold medication. So says, yeah, I do know that he used pain pills and Sudafed during high school, but I wasn't aware of it at the time. And that's the only thing that I've ever heard about was back then that he had done that, but nothing since then that he was aware of. So our final couple, we have a forensic document examiner. So he did handwriting analysis, which comes down to like that signature on the life insurance application.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty clear that Eric did not sign that document. It was not his signature.
Yeah.
It was definitely different. And because it was a PDF, he had to downgrade it to probably didn't sign because the quality is lower. So that kind of takes you down. But it's clear looking at it, Eric didn't sign that. I could tell you, and I'm not a forensic document examiner. I can look at that and say, that's not his signature. You know, it does look like someone is trying to copy how he would sign things, but it's not the same way that he would do it. But he can't say whether or not Kouri signed it, just that Eric did not sign it, and that it does appear to be someone attempting to sign his signature. The defense pretty much wants to bring in that it's not that reliable, you know, that there's this report or something that brings into question this forensic examination. And when the state gets back up, they point out that that report was written back in 2008, so many years ago, and that it was about the forensic sciences as a whole, not about forensic handwriting analysis or something, and that they had made recommendations for all of these different areas of the forensic sciences, how to make it more reliable or consistent or something like that. So that's a little bit of a mischaracterization of the situation. So the original lead detective on the case was Detective Woody. And about a year after Eric's death, she has an opportunity to be a canine officer, which she had put in for a long time previously and has been waiting for the opportunity to come open to her. So she took that, and that's when the role switched over to Detective O'Driscoll as the lead detective in the case. So she's the one who responded to the scene. When she got there, Eric's sister had said that it's possible Kouri had something to do with the death. And just the things that Kouri was telling them that night that we've already talked about, as far as like, no, he never used drugs. He had Lyme disease, but he wasn't taking anything for it. He had pain pills prescribed, but he didn't take those. He took vitamins. No drug paraphernalia in the home or in the garbage. All the garbage cans were empty, she said, except for that cock and bowl that was in the kitchen garbage can, and that a housekeeper had come earlier that day and had emptied all the garbages, which is why they were all empty. So she is pretty much saying, like, even though the sister told us that, everything we're seeing, we don't have any probable cause to search anything further than just right around the body. We did ask permission to look in the bathroom and in the kitchen garbage can, but they really couldn't do anything more than that until they got more information. And so it wasn't until they got back autopsy results, well, really toxicology results that showed he had a massive fentanyl overdose, that they had any sort of probable cause to look further into the situation. So that's why they didn't do their first search until April 13th of 2022. So it was over a month after his death before they were allowed to search. So they did search one of Eric's trucks, but another of the trucks, one thing that Cody had said during his testimony is that they came a couple days after Eric's death and picked up the C&E computer from his house. So they got it before law enforcement did. You know, of course, law enforcement, they didn't have a warrant to take that stuff until more than a month later. And then someone had taken one of Eric's work trucks in for some maintenance or something, and the dealership had called Cody to tell him that it was ready to be picked up. So he went and got it from the dealership, and he brought it back to work because it was owned by C&E. And no one was supposed to be driving it, and so he went and got it. The defense's concerns with that are that Katie, all these other people had access, or potentially had access to Eric's truck before law enforcement could ever look at it. So they could remove evidence, alter things if they wanted, or if they chose to. Then maybe they would miss something and wasn't a very good investigation. and also accused them of, when that search warrant was executed on April 13th, that they detained Kouri. And she says no, she wasn't detained. She was placed in the back of the police car and told to wait until the detective could come out and explain what was happening, and that she was in the police car for approximately 10 minutes. So the defense wants to, they took her into custody and held her while they were searching the house. And they're like, yeah, for 10 minutes. And then someone came out and told her what was happening. And then she did whatever she was going to do. But she wasn't allowed to be in the home during that time.
Yeah.
Apparently there were some cases of fentanyl-laced gummies being sold in the county or something. She says she's not really aware of that information, so they don't go any further on it, but I guess later on they do talk about it, and apparently there were some cases that had shown up. But it doesn't matter because he didn't have THC in his system, so what's the point? You know?
It doesn't matter.
No.
Unless it was just a straight fentanyl gummy, and he thought it was THC, but it had no
Yummy.
THC in it.
Was it a lemon drop gummy? Okay, so the private investigator comes in, and the defense, they don't like that he's involved at all. It's been pretty nasty that he's involved, and his whole goal is to try and get Kouri and, whatever.
Right.
But he comes in and he's walking with a cane and he's carrying this big old neck brace. He goes to be sworn in, and the lead defense attorney is just giving him the, not really stink eye, but kind of, because it's like, are you serious right now? Like, you're walking in with that. I mean, it just seems very much like, are you trying to garner sympathy or something? Like, what are you doing with that cane and the neck brace and whatever? Yeah, she's not impressed by it. And I don't know if, the state notices the look that they're giving, or if they would have done this anyway. But they ask him, okay, well, we can see you're using a cane and, whatever. And he says, yeah, he just had a neck fusion surgery. They didn't go into a lot of detail, but he just had surgery. He's recovering from surgery. So I think to really strengthen his position in trial, he gives his background that he has worked approximately 100 homicide cases as a private investigator, right? And has testified in at least 12 homicide trials. All 100 homicide cases that he's worked for the defense. And every time he's testified for the defense, this is the first time in his career that he is actually sitting on the witness stand for the prosecution.
Interesting.
Yeah. So normally he would be hired by the defense attorneys to work for them. And I mean, they have their own investigators sitting there behind them, the defense attorneys do. So the fact that there is an investigator, it's like, why are you making that so shady? You have one of your own. And normally he's doing this for defense attorneys, right? For the defense team, trying to get information and stuff for them. So
it's not shady when I do it, but it's shady when you do it.
That's right.
And
always. Yeah, so he says that he was contacted by the attorney who wrote the trust, right? And she had reached out to him because of the lawsuit that Kouri had filed against the trust and Katie. So he talked to Katie and her husband, Clint, and said, okay, well, here's the deal. You're hiring me to find the truth. And I can tell you right now, the truth is half what you most fear it to be and half what you most desire it to be. And you just have to accept whatever that reality is going to probably be somewhere in the middle. And you can't separate those two things. You're going to have to accept the truth about what happened to your brother, whatever that truth is. And they said, okay, yeah, we agree. So I think because he's used to working for the defense, that's probably why he's like, hey, the things that I find may not support what you think. It may not support that Kouri did this or she did anything shady, and it might actually show some unpleasant things about Eric that you don't really want to accept. But if you're going to hire me, you're going to have to agree to accept the things that I find, because it might not be pretty.
Right.
So all the information that he finds would be disclosed to his client, and they had agreed anything that was discovered would be disclosed to law enforcement. He says that exchange of information only went one direction. He would sometimes ask them for stuff, but was typically just denied. And it's like, okay, you can give us stuff, but we're not giving you stuff, you know?
Right.
He never had any contact with the county attorney's office, which would be the prosecution, prior to Kouri's arrest. And he gave them the information about his investigation after they subpoenaed for the file. And so he turned that over. I don't think he would have been opposed to it, but I think basically it's like, we weren't working together, you know. Yes, I'm testifying for the prosecution right now, and I turned over my files to them upon their request, but we weren't working together trying to get Kouri.
Right.
When he starts his investigations, he starts with a number of hypotheses. In this case, it was hypothesis 1, Eric took his own life as a result of an accidental overdose, or I guess could be an intentional overdose.
Right.
He didn't say that, though, just accidental overdose. Or 2, Kouri has had Eric surreptitiously take a massive amount of fentanyl and killed him. So those were the 2 things that he was looking at. And all the information that he found was weighed against those hypotheses to see, does it support it? Does it disprove it? He conducted between 40 and 50 interviews in the course of his investigation, friends, coworkers, family members, and all of Kouri's family members refused to be interviewed, though. And those interviews were all recorded, and all those recordings were passed to law enforcement. He had gotten call data records from the cell phone carriers because both Eric and Kouri's phones were paid for by C&E. So they were the ones that had the right to turn over those records if they wanted to. And so they did turn over those records to the private investigator. And the first time he was looking at the period between January and May of 2022, he looked at first, like, who did Eric and Kouri contact? How weighty was this contact for them? What's the communication like? And said the contact with the most weight was Kouri's mother, which makes sense. The other one that stood out to him was Carmen Lauber. The only contact between Kouri's mom and Carmen was Eric.
Okay.
So that's how much communication they had compared to everyone else. And that includes Chelsea.
That's a lot for your
Yeah.
housekeeper.
Totally, yeah. And when he looked into Carmen, of course, he sees that she has all of this criminal history involving drugs, drug sales, drug use. She's currently in drug court, and she tested positive for drugs around the time of Eric's death. And so he's like, okay. After Kouri was arrested on May 8th of 2023, law enforcement did a search, and then they released the home, and the trust gave the private investigator authorization to go in and perform a search himself. So he goes in, he uses a GoPro, records all of his searches, everything that he finds. He's scanning in all of these documents. He's photographing things that he sees. He says he never brought anything into the home. He did take some items from the home. One of those where he claims that he found communication between Kouri and her attorneys, like written communication, and that he's like, well, it would be unethical for me to look at any of that information. So anytime he found something with that letterhead, he would stick it into a manila envelope. And then after he was done with that search, he turned that envelope over to her attorneys.
Gotcha.
The current defense attorneys were not those attorneys, right? The current defense attorneys were like rolling their eyes, like, sure you did. Sure you didn't look at any of that stuff. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, that's what he's claiming, that he didn't look at any of it.
Even if he did, he can't really share any of that.
Right. It makes me wonder if some of the things that the prosecution is claiming or stating, if the defense attorneys feel like, oh, that shows inside knowledge or something that they shouldn't know. I mean, they never state that. It's just their faces tell me that they think that. But he does say that Eric's vital records, like his social security card, his birth certificate, his passport, things like that, that was taken and turned over to Katie or / the trust. And then anything that he thought might be of evidentiary value, he didn't touch it. He would contact law enforcement and he would say, hey, this might be of interest. And they would secure the search warrant and they would come in and they would do their search. And he says besides one time, he was never there when they came back to do that search. And the only time that he was, so he found a hidden recorder, but nothing ever came in about that. So I don't know what was on that or why that mattered. The blue cell phone was also found that day. But besides the recorder, it was also the letter. So we talked about when they gave their opening statement, the defense was saying that there was this letter and they came and it was sitting on the end of the bed. And so obviously it wasn't there the day of Eric's death. And it's been over a year and Kouri's been living there. And how did this letter get there and whatever? And I'm like, what is this letter? Yeah. So I guess he had found earlier a letter purportedly written by Eric titled the My Princess letter.
Oh.
And she asks, oh, so did you find this, the My Princess letter? And he's like, I don't remember a My Princess letter. I remember a baby cakes letter.
Oh my gosh.
And she's like, it's the same letter. I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to read that letter. What the heck?
Mental note for what to look for.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I don't know if we ever see the letter. So he had originally found it May 10th of 2023. So that was a couple days after her arrest. And he puts it back. And then later on August 9th, he takes it out. He photographs it on the bed, tells law enforcement about the recorder or whatever. And so he had taken a picture of it there. But it's not because, oh, I walked in and I saw this letter on the end of the bed. It's like, no, I put it on the end of the bed and I took a picture, but I had found it earlier and it was in this drawer. He leaves. He's not there. He doesn't know if they collected it or not. He's not sure what happened with it. So the defense is kind of like, you were in there unwatched. And he's like, I recorded everything. The big thing that they want to say, which I think they did say in their opening statement, is he's the one that took Eric's computer out of the house and had access to that computer, getting into the files and whatever before law enforcement ever saw it. And he says, no, that's not true. And they're like, we have a video of you carrying that. Well, the laptop had been picked up by one of the C&E employees after Eric's death. And it had been taken back to their offices. He eventually got that from them, right? And the laptop that they see him carrying and putting into his car is his own laptop that he was using to scan documents into. And so they're saying, oh, this was the C&E computer that you took. And he's like, no, that's my own computer. And his was something else. So they had mischaracterized that for sure. The defense also accuses him of sitting and watching Kouri's house before she's arrested. And he denies that. He says, no, I never did that. But he had gotten approval to put tracking devices on Kouri's vehicles. So her vehicle and two of her mom's vehicles, one of which her brother Ronnie was driving at the time. And he also got approval to put a tracking device on what he believed to be Carmen Lauber's car. And it turns out it was her friend's car, Nick Bonsavage.
Right, because she didn't have a car.
Exactly. And so he removes that device when he realizes it's not hers. He did send an email to law enforcement saying, hey, FYI, Carmen Lauber is on the ropes with drug court right now. She just tested positive or something. Like, she might be willing to talk if you go back and talk to her now. And so they did. But when you hear from the lead detective, it doesn't seem like that's really why they went to talk to her in the first place. So it seems like they're both seeing the same things. One of the crazy things that the defense throws out is they ask this PI if he saw evidence of sexting between Eric and anybody other than Kouri. And he says, no, I didn't see any of that. And he's like, maybe I don't know what you mean by sexting, but no. So they bring in these text messages. They just show them to the witness. They don't show them to us. But apparently they are text messages between Eric and his friend Bryce. And they're characterizing these text messages as sexting because, well, the first one that they brought in was, Kouri and I are starting an open relationship tonight, so I'm taking you home. He's like, yeah, I remember seeing that message. It's a joke between friends. Like, there's not, like, I don't know what you're talking about. And they said, well, didn't they do this all the time? And they were messaging about oral sex and anal sex and all of this stuff. I guess they show him more messages. And he's like, I don't remember what I thought at the time. I'm telling you what I'm thinking right now. And to me, these come across as jokes. And I believe that's the same way that they would have come across to me back when I read them the first time. And I'm like, wait, are you really suggesting that you think he and Bryce were having a sexual or physical relationship?
Right.
Bizarre. Yeah, I don't know. He's like, no, I resist that characterization. I don't see it that way at all. When the state comes up and redirects, he's like, no, I never saw any evidence of Eric engaging in any sort of homosexual acts. No evidence of him using any illicit street drugs. And one of the defense's big complaints is basically he gets to get these tracking devices. Law enforcement, they have to follow certain rules. They have to follow constitution, whatever. Yeah, and it's like, well, you get to skip all those rules and you get to get this information and pass it along to law enforcement. And that is basically infringing on people's constitutional rights. And he says, well, I have to follow the guidelines of ethics for private investigators. And when I'm working for an attorney, which he was for this case, then he also has to follow the guidelines of the attorney that he's working with throughout the case. So to claim that what he's doing is unethical, it's like, yeah, I would do it for you. If I was hired by you, I would be doing the same thing and you would not be complaining about it.
Right.
So there's a really short blip of a couple people. When Josh was on the stand, he said something about being confused about the timestamps on some of these text messages, that he felt like there was a time discrepancy between when he thought he sent a message and when it showed on the report. And the digital forensics guy comes up and says, yes, maybe some of those earlier formats that he may have seen, they would have been in server time, which is on the East Coast because that's where their offices are located. But now those have all been adjusted to the current time. And then the defense also wants Carmen Lauber brought back in to ask her some questions. But really, they just are trying to bring out things that say, you were breaking the conditions of your parole. You weren't supposed to have a firearm. They found a firearm during the search of your room. You weren't supposed to be drinking alcohol, but you were seen by law enforcement at a concert holding a drink. And then your probation officer called you the next day and you admitted that you drank and you broke curfew that night of the concert and you didn't get home before 9 p.m. And then you made a statement to the judge trying to get permission to go out of state, saying that you'd never broken any of the parole conditions, so you should be allowed to go, which, based on this stuff that we just said, those were lies. That was a lie. You hadn't been 100% compliant. And you were making false statements. So basically, you're willing to make false statements in order to get stuff that you want. And so we can't really trust anything that you say.
Okay.
And the state kind of clarifies, well, okay, so the gun that was seized was during a search performed in April 2023 the parole agreement wasn't signed until a month later in May of 2023. So she wasn't actually breaking her parole agreement by them finding that gun. Yes, she wasn't supposed to have a gun because she was a felon, right? So she was breaking the rules, but it wasn't this parole agreement that she was breaking. And they don't ask about it, but she does say, well, the reason she had the alcohol was because a friend didn't have their wallet or something with them and asked if she would just buy it for them and they would pay her back. And so she had bought them snacks and drinks and was taking it back to them. Someone saw her. She left the concert early, and yes, she was a little bit late getting home, not before 9 p.m., right? So I'm like, that's kind of a small thing to say, you were lying. You broke your parole because you were holding a drink at a concert and you didn't get home before 9 p.m. Okay, you know. All these things that the defense wants to bring up to try and poke holes in the story seem like they're not really being backed up by anything at this point. And so I've really had in mind the idea that they're going to call witnesses and show some of this stuff, because why are they saying all this stuff? It sounds like they know something, and then we're going to see that there's really only the one more witness, which is the lead detective on the case, and then the defense don't call anybody.
Always weird.
Yeah, so
but apparently that's common, right? For them to not even call anyone.
It is, but at the same time, I feel like in this case, they're claiming all of this stuff, or seeming to say like they have all of this evidence of this other stuff. Like, if you're just throwing out maybes or possibilities or something, okay, well, it makes sense that you don't bother calling anyone, but they're talking as though they actually have information that disproves some of these things or shows some other stuff. And to me, I think that's when you put on a case and you show, hey, look, so that you support the stuff that you're saying, so that the jury can see that. You're not just calling things into question, you know? So to me, yeah, I just am shocked that they didn't call any witnesses at all. They didn't put on a case at all. They just throw these things out there and then they don't back it up at all. Yikes. I might have lied. I might be a lie face. So next time we're going to end with the lead detective on the case and what he found. Well, the second lead detective on the case, I guess, after Detective Woody. And then what the closing arguments are for each side and where I land with my verdict on that. And then Maryn is going to tell you what the actual verdict was. We'll see if it agrees with what I come down to. I don't really know what verdicts they came up with. And then what's happened since then. And anything that maybe I don't know about that's out there. So
that's right.
Thanks for joining us yet again for another episode of the Kouri Richins case. Until next week, I am Christy.
I'm Maryn.
And you've been listening to Hung.